Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there folks, Colin here from the Home Building Hub, and welcome to another episode. In this episode, we're going to essentially go right back to the start and help you better prepare and give you some simple steps to understanding this, some of the things that you need to best prepare before you start dealing with builders. So what I'll do, Darren, how are you today? And can you please give us a bit more of an intro on the episode?
Mate, absolutely. Thanks, Colin. Going great, mate. And, again, really excited about where the podcast is heading, mate. I've had a lot of great feedback over the last week about the podcast, and that feedback's really greatly appreciated. I know we had a conversation yesterday with someone who's going to jump on the podcast very soon, which we're really excited. We'll share that with you as it comes closer. But, working with some really good people to get them onto the podcast, which is great. But today we're going to be covering building quotes and how to go about getting the best building quote, I guess, and what does that mean? And we'll talk through some of the top, the steps to get to that, which I think will be fantastic. And I guess moving forward from there, we'll work on some specific podcasts about things such as site costs, estate covenants, promotions, and so on. So, today's a bit of an overview of getting a great quote, and then we'll break that down moving forward. I guess before we, get into these topics, as I mentioned, the episode's about 4 simple steps in helping you prepare yourself to get the best quote you can out there that's going to be on the home that really suits your needs. So again, I guess probably easy just to kick things off, Colin, throw it to you, mate. So step number 1, what does that look like?
So step number 1, we're going to go through 4 of them today. And step number 1 is finance. And I guess before we talk about anything finance, I just want to quickly cover off on our disclaimer. So whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only. You should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions. Getting a little more comfortable with that one, Darren, now. Flying through it.
And I'd forgotten to throw to you on that, so I appreciate you.
No, that's all right.
Mate, just skip that step. It's, mate.
Got your back.
Is it needed? No, it is needed. It is needed.
No problem. So step 1.
I'll give the fee. Oh, the fee,
yes.
People have been liking the fee, but the fee for the podcast is, if you like the podcast, please share it with somebody else. So just hit the share button, flick it onto a friend, someone who's going to get some value out of it. We'd really appreciate that. On top of that, if you're getting value yourself, please leave us a 5-star review. It'll go great guns in terms of getting the podcast promoted and getting into the hands of those, customers out there that are looking for some really great, simple advice that's going to help them along their building journey. And that's what we're here to do. So we'd love for you to share it. Love you to give us a 5-star review if you're enjoying the podcast as well. So over to you, mate. Finance, talk about it.
Nice. So step 1, most common sense step, is to get your finance first. And at least not necessarily getting the approval first, but getting the understanding of what your borrowing capacity is. Getting a financial broker to give you an assessment, to work out what it is you can borrow, and then work out what it is, most importantly, you can afford. Okay, so we thought we'd just go through a few of those little steps for you. So just our opinion, the best option is to go to a broker instead of a bank, because they're going to give you more options. And secondary to that, what you might find is most builders these days actually have a broker that works with them directly. And that's actually a really good resource for you to use. And the reason I say that is mainly because that broker is well versed in construction lending. Okay, so some people may be in a situation right now where you've got the capacity to borrow enough money and afford to repay, to take action now and go and get quotes and go and get a block and put it all together and buy a package, soon. But some people are not quite there yet. So you might have to go on what's generally referred to as a savings plan. New home finance brokers are much more experienced at those savings plans. In fact, some builders specifically have financial companies like that they refer to create these financial these savings plans for you. So just because you may not have the capacity today doesn't mean you can't work towards it with some help from a broker. So that's why we start with finance. It's really important to understand that I guess people like Darren, they like to go out to the display villages and see all the glitz and the glamour, as I say, and that's totally okay. But when for the rubber to hit the road, you do it, and you need to understand your own circumstances financially. So yeah, in that case, sometimes people who are in the position where they can't get that money today, we actually have the ability in our industry. Not all land is ready to build on. So titled land means it's ready to build on. So you can take action on that straight away. And that means the builder can probably have you on site within a few months in some cases. But in the event that you need longer to save the money, you might get a block of land that isn't ready to title for 6 months or 12 months. And then you can get a consultant from a new home builder to pop a quote on top of that block for you, and you'll have a good idea of what that construction is going to cost you as well. You may end up proceeding with land only initially. You may go with both, and the consultant at the builder will allow for future price increases and put that in your price. It's called contingency to account for it. So essentially, just because you can't necessarily borrow enough today doesn't mean you can't go and take action and start pre-planning and preparing with a new home finance broker. That's tip number one, or step number one, Darren.
I think, Cole, on that too, the developers often, they want to see people get into the market, right? So they'll often work with, they'll hold a block for that particular circumstance or two in a stage release where they really want to help people get into a home, right? And they want to see people get their first home or their first investment property. So those low deposit options, and then getting on a savings plan and working your way through that, having that, that broker there as your coach, is really encouraged by a lot of developers, which is great. And likewise builders, we all would love, it's nothing more pleasing than when someone who comes along probably somewhat stretched financially because they just haven't had an ability to save enough at that point in time, but they're really keen to be in the market. There's great support out there for them from the builder, from the land developer, and from a great broker who's going to coach them through it. So it's an awesome part of what, you can't walk up to an auction and do that on the weekend. You just don't have that ability. Whereas in new housing, that time delay can often be your advantage, and you can get into the market when you probably didn't think you could. So
that's right.
It's a great point, mate. Really like that one.
There are different solutions
so I guess
for different needs. Number two, Daz. Sorry, go for it.
Number two is do some initial homework, and what does that mean? I guess is we'd like to say get it out of your system, and what we mean by that is jump online. Do your homework online. So it's not necessarily getting out into the display villages. At this point, it's getting an understanding of what's out there online. I guess there's using that to really understand the pricing for the area. Because if you want to live in a suburb and then you look online and the cheapest package is 200 grand above your budget, maybe look at the next suburb down the road where it's going to fit, and that might give you a great opportunity. So I guess it's helping to align your thoughts with the reality. It also helps you decide, what estates are worth considering, what builders' floor plans and levels of inclusion, etc. And I guess it can become a little bit confusing as well. So gather as much information as you can there, but don't be overwhelmed by that, and don't, I guess, make too many assumptions out of that information. It's homework only, right, at this point. It is to get a basic understanding before you talk to a sales consultant. It does start to feed you with a bit of that information, but it does also help you derive a list of questions that you can roll in and start saying, well, I'm confused about this and this, or can you help me towards this and this with the sales consultant? The other bit I really think it helps you do is shortlist some of the builders that you'd like to work with, and also some of their floor plans that you'd like to talk to those consultants about or go and visit. So if they are on display, and don't make assumptions about the price and the process. You'll have a bit of a rough guide to where it's going to be, but again, often people are a little bit surprised that there's other things required to, meet the minimum standards to be able to build that home. So understand that, right, I'm thinking this sort of a budget, but be mindful that may need to change, and don't get surprised when that's the case, or disappointed. I guess go in there with an open mind when you kick off into the next stage, which is getting out there and getting some quotes. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of where I guess I see it, Colin, from that homework point of view.
Mm.
I don't know if you've got any to add there.
Only one is that this process of doing your homework initially, what it's going to lead to is a whole bunch of questions. So note those questions and have those in the ready for your meetings with sales consultants when that time comes, because there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of variables. So as we shared in the House and Land episode we've done, there's a bit more to this, and there's the best thing to sit with the consultants that they can navigate you through the ins and the outs of what's required for that particular block or that particular house or package combined. So yeah, definitely this step is really, as Darren said at the top, to get it out of your system, because it's probably inevitably going to lead you to more questions and more confusion. But at least we understand that you need to get on there and go through the exciting part, see what plans are there, what inclusions builders have, and all those fun things. Go through some virtual tours. This is probably really targeted to before you reach out and on an inquiry level. So go on realestate.com, and a website called openlot.com.au has all the land estates on it. That's a really good resource. Absolutely. And, so yeah, go through that process, enjoy it, and just take note of all the questions you've got before you head into the next sort of stage. So moving on to... go.
Even as builders, we do the same. I mean, yesterday, I was seeking some inspiration, so I jumped on and I was Googling some of the Southern California builders just to get some ideas, working on a couple of projects at the moment. And it, I must say there was some really hideously ugly facades on some of these houses. I don't know how people even build them. Like I can't imagine, in a brand new land estate having a house that looks like a church and the next one looking like a Masonic lodge. And then it was pretty funny to have a look at some of these facades, some of the, really ugliest things I've seen. But again, suits a different market, but we do the same. So we get out there and we're shopping around and looking for different ideas and inspiration. And that's exactly what it's about. So,
yeah.
Mate, over to you. Step 3.
Step 3. So this is the most important out of all of it. And after, for a lot of people, you may skip number 2 and just go get your finance sorted and move straight to this step, which is establish your needs and your wants list. Okay, so if it's in a Word document or an Excel table or whatever it may be, that's something that or on a notepad you would definitely be. I would encourage you to do. So you've probably got a little bit of awareness as you start this process, and what you need to do, I guess, is understand one thing is that most times, as we have shared this before, in most cases, a client will need to sacrifice something in terms of their new home and their land. So it might be maybe the home size becomes a bit smaller. It might be, as Darren said earlier, you move down the highway a little further to the next suburb or two, just to meet your budget needs. And a sales consultant will help you with that. It's just the reality of, and not all, but most people that come through that perception to reality process. So one thing I wanted to make really clear, and I found this over the years, Darren, is that I think there's a lot of hesitation. People don't want to be sold to, as we've shared before. What I want to explain is that if a consultant can get you all of your, not only your needs, but all of your wants into your package price and it's within budget, they will absolutely do that. That's in their best interest to do that, because then they're going to increase their chance of you proceeding with them. So it's a little different in our industry. Unlike a real estate agent that fights to, I guess, get the best price for a vendor, all the base prices with builders are predetermined. So a sales consultant just, for that plan, it costs that much as a base price, and that has those inclusions, okay? So please understand that that's what they're working with. They're not just picking and choosing a base price, today versus last week, okay? And those base prices do have increases, and those increases get applied by the builder across all designs usually. So that's one thing to know that's a little bit different. So if a consultant can give you the best quote or a quote within your budget, they will do that. They're not trying to load money on top just for the sake of it. Okay, so it's not a battle between a vendor and a buyer in that sense. Okay, 3 main factors that influence pricing that we'd like to share, and we will go into further detail in future episodes, but in general, there are 3 factors. So the size of the home is definitely one that impacts it. If you buy a 25 square home or you buy a 22 square home, there's going to be a price difference, okay? Site cost is certainly one that influences the price. Okay, so if you have a nice flat block and no fill, which is something we might share in a future episode, the site costs are going to be, probably a lot lower than the opposite of that. If you're on a block that's got a lot of fall, or a lot of fill, then there's additional cost required for the builder to build that home on that block. So that can influence it. They're probably the main two, but the third one is, other things that you may want and upgrade yourself. Okay, so that will factor the price, additions and add-ons, and so on. So I guess one of the reasons that we always encourage a buyer to get a sales consultant from a new home builder to find them land is because of the site cost factor, because their best result is to get you the lowest price they can within what you're looking for, within your budget. And the way to do that would be to find, block A that's flatter and got cheaper site costs than block B that doesn't. Okay, so that's something that most people are not capable of doing. You need the help of a new home sales consultant to do that. So that's definitely one of the reasons that we would encourage you to. Yeah, go Daz.
On that note, obviously with the changes to the 7-star, it's going to become more and more important because, the home you want on the wrong block might not actually be able to be built. So, getting that advice, making sure the orientation of the home's right as well is going to become so important, and it's going to be much more design specific rather than, great, I can pick this house and double glaze windows and put some extra insulation in and I'll spend some extra money to get it to work. It still may not work and you might not be able to build that home on that block if you don't get the right advice. So, work with the sales consultant, the building sales consultant to really help you out in that space, particularly in the future when the 7-star kicks in October.
Yeah, good point. And then I guess secondary to that, the only main reason we get a list of needs and wants is because then that enables your sales consultant to give you more than one quote. So they can give you, let's give you a 22 square home design with 4 bedrooms and 2 living areas. Here's the quote. Or let's give you a 25 square home, which is a bit bigger and it's got maybe an extra living area or bigger bedrooms, etc. Here's the quote. And then you can start, based on a needs and wants list, they can start pulling pieces in, putting them in or taking them out. Here's your quote based on your needs, and here's a quote based on your wants, and maybe you can meet somewhere in the middle. Okay, so that's why we encourage you to do that. And what I'd like to do, maybe to move over to you, Darren, is let's go through. We're going to share with you now some of those needs and wants categories and items, which will help you do that. And then perhaps, Darren, if we prepare a resource or a document somehow, we could probably give people a checklist and pop it on a Home Building Hub website for them.
Absolutely, mate.
One of the technical geniuses can help us work out how to do that. So, so maybe, Daz, do you want to start covering off?
Set, mate.
What's that?
I said that's beyond my skill set.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll work it out.
I'm good at making the list. Putting it on the website's another story. But anyway,
that's right. Maybe we'll post it out.
Needs and wants categories. So I guess number one would be house size is pivotal, right? So the number of squares or square meters, of the home. I guess it's really important to make sure that you get an understanding of how big that home's going to be and is that going to suit your needs. And again, you may need to get out there and visit a display home to get an understanding of how big a 22 square, like you mentioned, or a 25 square home is. And also the other consideration there, I think, and is ceiling height. So again, a 22 square home with 9 foot or 2,700 ceilings can actually sometimes feel bigger than a 25 square home with 2,400 ceilings. So, those sort of little differences can make a big, difference to the end outcome. So visiting the display to have a look at those sort of things can really help. The number of bedrooms, 2, 3, 4 that you need, 5 possibly. There's some designs with 6 even. Living areas, do you need 1, 2, 3, 4? Do you want a theatre, etc.? In amongst all that, garage sizes, do you need a single garage or a double garage, or do you even want a triple garage or a quadruple garage? Al fresco or outdoor room, do you want one of those? Is that important to you, having that structure as part of your home, or are you going to build a pergola afterwards, or you're not even interested at all in that? The layout, I guess. So do you want the master bedroom to the front, the master bedroom to the rear? Do you want an L-shaped kitchen? Do you want the kitchen to the side or to the back, etc.? Are all important. I guess inclusion needs, such as I mentioned already, high ceilings, but stone bench tops, for example, to your kitchen, bathroom, ensuite? Are they 20 mil, 40 mil? Are they, some of the newer products out there where you can get a 6 mil bench top? And, like those things are really good to note in your wants and needs. And I think you really want to break it into these are the things I need 4 bedrooms because I've got 3 kids and that's what we need.
Yeah.
First, I'd really like to have the stone in the bathroom, but in the end, laminate's going to actually be just fine, and I reckon I can make that look pretty good. So where are those areas you're willing to sacrifice? I guess other things to consider would be, contract timing. Do you need a contract really fast? You got land coming up to settle because you hadn't done your preparation work, or there's a bargain on a block of land, but you need to have both contracts together. How soon can the builder get that for you? Do you want to do a color selection? For most people, it's a great part of the journey and it's such a personalization part of the journey. But for some people, they don't want the stress. It can be stressful and they don't feel like they're experts and they want to just trust an expert who's done a color board that is going to look fantastic. So, both are an option. And when do you want a site start? And also, depending on the builder you deal with, they may not be able to site start you when you want a site start because they could have a full book. Their insurance might not be capable of covering more jobs on site, etc. So there's a whole lot to consider in amongst all of that. The other part, I think, in the wants and needs is when you get the quote, sometimes you're going to go, hold on, I was hoping for this, but it's not in the quote. But for that builder, it might actually be a standard inclusion. And so you might say, well, I want 900 mil appliances, and that builder includes it, but the other one's charging you for them because they only have 600 mil appliances. So it's really difficult sometimes to break down all of those things and make sure that nothing's missed. So having that wants and needs list gives you a really good reference point. You can go back and say, hey, I want a 900 mil appliances. Where are they? And then the builder says, well, actually included. So, I'm not charging you extra because they're in our base house price. And that can be the variance in base house price as well, is those level of inclusions. I had an example this week where the site costs for a particular builder were quite cheap. And to the eye, you go, well, that's either a bargain or they're bugging it up, or I'm a bit untrustworthy about that price. But in reality, that builder had a H-class slab versus the other quote that had an M-class slab. So, and again, we'll talk about those things, H and M-class slabs, but it just meant that they had a bigger slab as a standard inclusion, essentially, or a stronger slab as a standard inclusion. Therefore, their site costs should be cheaper. And, if they weren't, that'd be surprising. So, yeah, I guess that wants and needs list is really important so that you get the things that are desirable to you. So, step 4, Colin. I reckon this is a pretty easy one, but what's step 4, mate?
Yes, so once you've got the needs and wants list, again, repeating, it's not really about pricing at that stage. It's about your needs and your wants. Don't stress about the rest of it. Our advice in step 4 is to go and take action. Go out and speak to some sales consultants and sit with them and see which ones you're comfortable with, which builders, which consultants, and, talk to these people about, here's my needs and wants list. Can you help me, find a package or a quote that's going to work within that? And that's as simple as that step 4 needs to be. I find in my experience, Darren, that people spend far too long, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, just moving around display villages and hoping to find, I'm not really sure, but it's actually the wrong way to do it. Once you've, as we said in the previous episode, once you've got it out of your system and you're ready to talk about what is included, what's not included, etc., just sit down with a sales consultant and they will do that. In a business like ours, it wouldn't be in a village. It would be an inquiry online, or it would be on a website inquiry and by appointment only at a home that you could be taken through. So, and that's one of the points you said, Darren, is, go for a walkthrough with someone through a display home or through a spec home and get an understanding of what's included and all those sort of bits and pieces. That's where your real lessons come from. Okay, so that's how you really start working through it. Okay, so that's a pretty simple one, Daz. And I think let's maybe finish this episode off with our top 3 tips for people to leave them with those. And you can do a number 1 and number 2 there. Oh, number 1, sorry.
Absolutely, mate. So I guess the first one is the market's always changing, right? So often people are trying to work out, when do I make a decision? How do I make a decision? Particularly in times like now. And what we've said previously, and like to reiterate again, is, the time to make a decision is now if you can afford it, and time in the market versus trying to time the market. You're going to win by being in the market, and you're going to have a roof over your head, and you're going to feel really happy to have your family sheltered by that home. And so, that would be our advice, is that if you're ready to make a decision, then make the decision to move forward. And in the long run, property prices will go up, and you're going to be financially in a really strong position. So that'd be number one. Number two is shop within your means. So, if you're a first home buyer, I guess if you looked at the home like it's an investment property moving forward in the long run, and you thought, well, I'll use this as a step towards my first investment property, but I'll take the advantage of things like the first home buyer's grant. It gets me out of home and I can have a great place to live in to start off with. Well, then you might tone down some of those needs on the wants and needs list so that they're a bit more humble. And then use that as a time in the market where you've able to gain some equity, pay down a bit of that debt, set yourself up to be able to buy your second home, which could be closer to your dream home. I'm in home number 4 for us, and for me, this is our dream home, right? But it's taken me 4 times to get to that. So, sometimes that's what it takes, is those steps along the way. My first home was 11 squares, which is bloody small, but still, it was a great little 2-bedroom home, and we raised our first daughter in that home, and we absolutely loved it. And now we're in 40 squares. So, you sort of step along as you go, and those opportunities sort of come to you along the way. And this time around, our wants and needs list, I remember with my wife, she had a wants and needs list that I think we really agreed upon when we went back and checked it. We were able to tick that right off the list. And ours wasn't a crazy list. We're pretty humble in that respect, but we had everything we wanted on that list. And now we live in a place that we absolutely love, and we made that move. So, we made the decision to move away from the city out to the country, and we live in Ballarat for the price difference. It was a significant saving by living, on a bigger block of land in the country than what it was to have a smaller block of land in the city. So, yeah.
And even that highlights,
over to you.
Even that highlights, Darren, the sacrifice. Maybe not the sacrifice, but the discussion around let's go and move out to Ballarat as opposed to trying to find this same dream home, 40 square dream home in Melbourne. And there's probably lifestyle reasons you chose to do that as well. But the point remains the same, is that realistically, no matter how big your budget is, there'll be something in there that you probably have to sacrifice. So our advice to get on top of Darren's point, or to help reinforce Darren's point, is if you're a first home buyer, try and take the emotion out of it as much as you can. Like, just get your needs met. Don't worry even really about the wants unless you've got the budget for it. But the less you spend on your first home, get in there, live in it for a year or 2 or 3, and then you can get straight on to the next one. And that's when you can start bringing some of those wants across. That's our best advice for anyone who's a first home buyer, or even who's doing their second home, or particularly for investors. They're a lot less emotive a lot of the time. I do find we deal with a lot of investors, Darren, and a lot of them are far more emotional than they should be. They're wanting color appointments, and they're wanting all these upgrades, and they think that they matter to the actual rental return they're going to get, and they do not make a single difference, despite how many times we tell them. So, please consider that. The point I would say is, as a tip I would give, is getting the best quote doesn't necessarily mean the cheapest quote. Okay, so if there's anything we've learned in recent times, it's that you should be probably steering clear of someone that's well and truly under where everyone else is sitting. So if you find a consultant you trust, if you find a builder that you trust, and the plan and the quote and everything you like, and they're 10K, 12K more than the other builder over there, stick with them, because you're going to be happier. And over the course of a 30-odd year loan, it's really not going to make any difference, that 10K, but it will absolutely make a difference to your journey as you go through the process. Okay, so that's my tip, Darren. I think it's a mistake I see people make all day, every day. And they keep bartering and arguing with us over price, and they give it for 10K cheaper, or their site costs are 5K cheaper, and things like that. We will give you some more education on the detail of those individual items and quotes as we go through more episodes. But please, guys, you must understand that picking the cheapest builder is not necessarily the best outcome for you. Pick the one that the consultant that spent the most time with you, that really helped you and educated you through the process, because they're probably the ones that still be holding your hand through the process later on as well. Okay, so rather than just trying to get your sale and move you on. Okay, so that's really important.
Colin, I remember a gentleman. His name was Ergen, and this is probably 15 years ago. So it resonates that much that I still remember his name. And he paid me a deposit for a home, and then a week later he came in. I thought we were going to sign off all the paperwork to move the job forward, and he came in and said, "Look, I've decided to cancel. I've found a better option." And I said, "Oh, that's great. No worries, mate. Look, I'm disappointed that's the case, but I'm wishing you all the best." And on his merry way, what is it that you like? Oh, the floor plan, the price, a bit of this stuff going on. A week later, he comes into my display, and we develop a bit of a rapport. And he comes in and goes, "Oh, Darren, I've cancelled with this next builder, and I've gone with this other builder." I go, "Oh, mate, geez, mate, finding this job pretty hard to line up the right house and stuff." He goes, "No, it's not the house. They've got a great promotion. Like, I'm buying the promotion." And I'm like, "Mate, you're going to live in the promotion." "I don't know, mate, but you're getting this stuff wrong. Like, which house do you like more?" He goes, "I like your house more." He said, "But I like their promotion." I'm like, "Mate, you're not living in the promotion. You're living in the house." And I just shook my head. And about 6 months later, he came back and he saw me and he said, "Oh, the house is underway and we really don't like it. We never actually saw the house under construction or saw, a display of that home, and we really don't like the house." And I'm like, "Mate, well, I told you, you got to pick the house you like the most, the one that resonates the most with you, and then adjust your wants and needs to suit your budget so that you end up with the house that you love. Because in the end, you're going to be living in the home, right? You're going to be living there. You can paint a wall. You can, do some of these things, afterwards, that are going to see you with a really nice house. But it's just such a great example where people can get it so wrong because they're so caught up on the dollar or the promotion and all the rest. Buy the house. Buy the house that you really like off someone you really trust, and that you've got a rapport with. So it's a great way to be. I think the last one, Colin, understand the differences between the quotes, right? So if you've got multiple quotes, understand those differences, and there are going to be some differences. And for example, if one's on one block and one's on another, the site cost could be different. So don't expect the same site cost on two different blocks. If you're in different estates, you're going to have different estate requirements. Again, I mentioned earlier, some builders will have some stuff as an included item, others won't. So again, that's going to all form part of a different process. Also, people are human. So sometimes a sales consultant might miss something. So one guy's got a bushfire attack level, a Bell rating upgrade on the home, and then someone else doesn't because they didn't check. That's not to say they were being shifty or whatever. They just missed it, and that can be a significant cost. And you're going, "Well, I saved myself $5,000 or $6,000, But in reality, when it comes to getting a permit, they're going to come back to you and say, "Look, I'm really sorry. You're going to need to pay this cost." Right. So, and in this market, they can't bear that cost. It's $5,000 or $6,000, and you think, "Oh, I got one over the builder. That'll be great." That's not a good thing, because you don't want to, you want to pay for what you're going to get, respectfully, and not use that as a bit of leverage to get a further discount. Because right now in this market, further discounts are it's a real struggle out there for the builder to make sure they remain profitable. So don't be looking at it that way either, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think that'd wrap it up, Colin. Really, I don't know if you have any other points to add into the tips, but I think there's some really good tips there for us.
No, I think, that's probably enough on this. It was more introductory and preparation work as far as this episode, and next episode we'll actually go through the items in a building quote for you, and then we're going to spend an individual episode on those items, talking about base prices, site costs, promotions, and all those sorts of things. We're going to share with you some really good insights. So stick around for the next episode you see coming out, because it will give you a fantastic insight and insider insight to how it works and educate you on how to look at your quotes and all those sorts of things. So I'm looking forward to that, Darren. It's going to be some really good value for people, and they will be better educated. And what that will do is also help our industry out. It'll help our sales consultants out, because they'll be dealing with clients who listen to the podcast, who have got some more education, who understand the process. You know what I mean? So I think there's a win-win for everyone here, and I think that's good.
Absolutely.
So we always like to say thank you to you at the end of the episode. We appreciate all the feedback we're getting. If you like what you heard, then please jump on the platform you're on, leave us a 5-star review. That would really be helpful. And of course, if you've got topic ideas, feedback, or questions you want to send us, jump onto the website, homebuildinghub.com.au. And other than that, I think anything else to add there, Daz?
No, mate, have a great week. Thank you very much.
Good on you, mate. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
1,